The goal of this podcast is to make sure that all of our listeners don't have to be on the pension.
I think every Australian should set that as a goal in life. That
don't be on the pension.
Outright goal is to make sure that you never ever find yourself on the pension.
So then you're a self-funded retiree, right? How much is in your super right now? Can you actually answer that question?
Yeah. A lot of people got industry super because it's a default, and you think, well, it's so big it must be good. But is it really big because it's good? It's got big because it's just a default for an awful lot of people. The performance isn't that good. Self-managed super funds typically outperform. Why? Because it's your money you're investing.
What are some of the common mistakes that you've seen? Let's trade some blows here.
I had one particular accountant for a period of time was not a fan of super, and I was new to Australia at the time, and he said, don't worry about putting anything in there.
Don't worry about it.
And I would have missed probably easily. Yeah.
It's a big mistake. Even just a basic industry or retail super fund, anything you suggest.
Make the decision, get the job done, and don't give up. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. Superannuation, it's that thing that so many people want to bury their head in the sand and one day, someday get around to it. We're going to explore some key developments, tricks, and strategies that you can apply today to ensure that you have a retirement that you can be truly proud of. People fall into two camps. Either it's so far away when we talk about retirement, you don't need to worry about it, or it's crept up on you and you have that come to Jesus moment. Neither of those are good things, and we'll show you how to fix them right now. See you on the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitchell Olarenshaw.
Super to be here, which is also the topic of conversation. How's that for a segue?
Terrible.
Yeah, I know. We're talking today about taking superannuation.
You need to retire from telling jokes.
Yeah, I know. I get sick of it, believe it or not. It's a part-time job here. We're going to be talking about taking super seriously and talking about superannuation. Now, as much as we've started with a fairly light-hearted introduction, this is something we cannot stress enough at any stage of life, whether you've just got your first job or if you're nearing preservation age, you got to get this stuff sorted, and the earlier the better, right?
100%. Yeah, I think if you could break down wealth building into three building blocks, one is learning to budget and save, two is having a primary place of residence, and number three is superannuation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and there are three absolute foundational pillars, and there are also three that people often push to the side, get around to one day, someday, and that can be very, very expensive.
That's the thing. I think now we probably are seeing a later age of retirement, and it's only going to get later and later because people can't afford to retire. So I think the goal of this podcast is to make sure that all of our listeners don't have to be on the pension.
I think every Australian should set that as a goal in life. That
don't be on the pension.
Outright goal is to make sure that you never ever find yourself on the pension.
So then you're a self-funded retiree, right?
Do the work, make it happen, and you might go, well, yeah, I'm missing out on what I could get, but it's half of nothing.
Yeah. Well, let's get stuck in. For our sort of newer listeners, what is superannuation and why is it so important?
Look, superannuation is something that was brought into the Australian workforce. Paul Keating, actually, Labor Prime Minister. And when it came in, it was designed to be a way for all stakeholders to provide for your retirement. And originally, believe it or not, it was 3% from the government, 3% from the employees, and 3% from their employer.
Seems reasonable.
Melted together and then put into a longer term investing account with the goal of creating a retirement nest egg. Obviously, like everything, things change over a period of time, and it's now closer to 12%, and it's 100% from the employer that has to pay it as opposed to anybody else. But it is such an important element to your financial well-being, is to make sure that you've got regular contributions going in there and being well invested to ensure that you get a future you deserve.
So superannuation, it's effectively done on autopilot for most people, assuming they're employees. So the hard part is really done. You go to work, your super gets paid every paycheck or every month or whatever it is. My question is more so around mistakes that people might be making, because as much as it's done on autopilot for you, you can really optimize it to help you down the line. So what are some of the common mistakes that you've seen? Let's trade some blows here.
Yeah, look, I've probably done a few of them myself. I had one particular accountant for a period of time was not a fan of super, and I was new to Australia at the time. He said, don't worry about putting anything in there.
Don't worry about it.
And I would have missed probably easily 10 years of contributions.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a big mistake. So you're the right accountant, I guess, is the...
Yeah, definitely. Poor advice in that instance. And I think for a lot of people that are self-employed, if you have your own business, You feel that either take the cash out or reinvest it back in your business, but putting it into your retirement isn't usually the thing that springs to mind. And often people will see that, my business is my retirement fund anyway. If and when I sell it, that'll fund my retirement. And you can actually make some big contributions to your super if you sell a small business, for example. There's a lot of tax exemptions that sit there. We're not going to get into that in this in this interview, but that's one of the things that you can, of course, do. But that's on the basis you do get to sell your business. I mean, we know that the stats for businesses falling over, 95% of businesses fail. So if that's your retirement exit of, when I sell my business, that'll be me retired. If your business goes, you're done. You've got no backup, no plan B.
Well, here's one for you. I would like to ask our listeners a question. How much is in your super right now? And can you actually answer that question?
Yeah.
And I would say most people probably have no idea as to how much super they've got. And I think that's a big problem, because it just means that it's not a consideration in the slightest when it should be.
Well, I think that's partly because it's autopilot. So it's not something you've got to do anything to or with or for. So it just happens in the background. And because it's something that happens in the background, it's not something you really focus on. It's like breathing. It just happens. It's not something that many people do. If you've ever spent time actually focused on breathing, if you do fire breathing, box breathing, all the different things that you can do in the health and well-being space, all of a sudden you realize that it's an amazing tool that you just take for granted that runs in the background. Wait till it's not running, then you know you've got a problem.
Now I'm thinking about it. That's the problem. I guess probably my main point within that, though, is if you have no idea what's in your super or what you're doing, how do you then optimize it? And the thing I say to everyone, even forgetting self-managed super right now. So if you've got, say, for example, an industry super fund or a retail super fund, you can go in and change the asset mix that's being invested. Your super is invested. If you're young like me in your 20s, you're probably going to have a more aggressive growth type portfolio, which you can select. For someone who's later down the track, such as yourself, older age, without giving away your age, you're probably going to pick a more conservative asset mix on the basis you're more likely to retire sooner than I am. So that's something I think that a lot of people forget to do, or even know that you can do.
That's right, changing the temperature gauge up and down, and what to change it to and who to listen to get the advice. One of the things, just stepping back out of that, is quite a number of people have actually got multiple superannuation accounts, which is a huge mistake, in that let's just say when you're at uni, you worked in you're a glassy at a nightclub. And so you've got superannuation contributions maybe sitting with Host Plus, because that will probably be the default provider.
The hospo,
So you've got a little bit of cash sitting there, and then you've started your career and you've maybe got a company super fund or maybe a retail super fund of some sort moving for you. The challenge is that each super fund would be paying life insurance for you, and yet you can only make one life insurance claim. Well, you can't, you're dead, but your estate effectively is the beneficiary of it. And yet you're paying for something you're never going to get access to. So consolidating is extremely important, and pull those into ideally one, which saves you a lot on fees. It starts to give you more economies of scale, gives you balance a boost, which obviously psychologically is good to see. You're only paying for one lot of insurance, administration becomes much less. So that sort of consolidation, I think, is something that's really, really important for people too. And just paying attention to it, because you can contribute more than the default. You can salary sacrifice as an example of that. So if you find yourself in a position where maybe you've got your mortgage paid off, and you've got, I know it's hard to say and it sounds like a throwaway line, but let's say you do have some surplus cash flow. The tax efficient thing to do would be to actually salary sacrifice it into your super. And that way you continue to build your retirement nest egg, and you're doing it in a way that's actually very tax efficient as well. So you've got lots and lots of things that you can do by sort of attending to that garden of your retirement. Like you mentioned previously, making sure the asset mix suits where you are at in your journey is also something that's a key consideration. And regularly seeing how it performs to make sure that you are getting a fair return, because again, it's one of those things people often don't have an awareness level of what's been on the table. And if you look at returns from, say, industry super, which is the biggest player here in Australia, a lot of people got industry super because it's a default, and you think, well, it's so big, it must be good. But is it really big because it's good? It's got big because it's just a default for an awful lot of people. The performance isn't that good. In fact, if you compare, the research that's come out to compare the performance of self-managed super funds to APRA regulated funds, self-managed super funds typically outperform. Why? Because it's your money you're investing. You've got a much better vested interest in optimizing it. So
yeah, I think the last couple of years too, they've made some good inroads with that, insofar as if you have an industry or retail super that underperforms the Australian stock market,
they've got a right to let you know.
They've got a right to let you know by a certain amount. So you've had a really bad year relative to where the index or the benchmark sits. They've got to let you know, hey, we've performed really poorly. You should consider changing, which I think is a great initiative.
The name and shame, I think, is huge, because a lot of these groups have been getting away with hoodwinking, I think, their investors for a period of time. And yeah, they're the first sector, be careful it doesn't turn into an industry super bashing session, but yeah, they're the first sector to crow about we're all about members' best interests. Yeah, if you look at the conduct of Cbus as an example, which has been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons, for the last couple of years now, CFMEU involvement, Wayne Swan, all sorts of different things that have been, let's say, on the nose and probably not in the very best interest of their members. You sort of look and go, well, okay, maybe I would be better off getting some level of control. And it doesn't have to be a self-managed super fund. You can go into a retail fund where, as you mentioned, you've got far more control of the asset mix. By definition, because you're taking a little bit of interest in it, you're going to focus on it more. And if you're able to do that, you're probably going to grow your retirement nest egg a little more. And there are lots and lots of things you can do. If you've got a low balance, you can bring forward contributions from coming years. You can catch up in there. There's all sorts of different things that you can be advised upon to get that number growing in the right way.
So to those AB switching gears now who are a little bit further down the line, who may be considering self-managed super, what is it? What do you typically need to work off, and how would you get one set up?
Yep. Look, again, it's an interesting space. In terms of some of the key criteria, number one, if you're going to set up an SMSF or self-managed super fund, you ultimately are going to be the person that's responsible for the investment decisions. And you can have advisors. We obviously advise our clients on this. So you may have an alternate trusted advisor that's going to assist with you there. Typically balance $250,000 or more. And that can be you and your partner, of course. And there'll be people that listen to this and pour scorn on it. Just recently, the regulator actually changed their view that, $1 million was the amount you needed for an SMSF, and conceded that it's actually far less than that now. And part of the reason is the costs of running an SMSF are very competitive on a dollar for dollar basis as soon as you get over that sort of 250 to 300,000. Why? Most types of retail or industry super fund charge you a percentage of your fund's balance. So if your fund's balance increases, you're paying more in fees. With a self-managed super fund, the fees are largely fixed. Getting an audit, getting your tax return and financials done are typically the big two costs, but they are fixed costs. So if you've got a $10 million super, $1 million super, or a $500,000 super, the costs for running it, given the fact that they're largely fixed, are much the same.
Where do you go to set up a self-managed super fund? How do you actually get any advice on that? Any suggestions?
Yeah, I do have suggestions on that. I mean, there are a lot of places you can go online where it's cheap, but price and value are really quite different. And so, yes, you may feel that, I can just set this whole thing up and take over running it. There are things that you're going to need a hand on the shoulder for, making sure, for example, that your insurance has rolled across and you've got appropriate cover on your insurance. There are no gaps. It's like-for-like coverage is a huge thing, because superannuation is where most people carry, their primary life insurance policy. Also, making sure that the investment mix is right for you as well. You hear people, they go to a property seminar and they get cajoled into opening an SMSF. You've got all this money, it's yours, buy some property, because obviously the seminar promoter is getting quite a handy kickback on anyone buying a property that day. Sounds very cynical, but it's a fairly accurate representation of some of the things that have gone on in recent years here in Australia. And don't get me wrong, that's not to say that property is not a good investment in super, but what I've seen and what can be quite dangerous is that you've got a single asset superannuation fund that all of the money is tied up in, say, one investment property, which is enormous concentration. Secondly, there may not be a lot of spare or superfluous cash flow. So let's say, for argument's sake, you need to do a renovation on that property, or I know vacancy rates aren't a major consideration for a lot of property investors right now. But let's say you got a vacancy rate for a period of time. How long can you afford to carry that before you're in a situation where your superannuation fund doesn't have spare cash? And super is not like other kinds of structure where you can put money in. you can make contributions. That's it. You can't do a loan in from yourself to help cover those tough times. So that's a little bit of a trap I see people falling into. So certainly getting advice. If you want to get great advice, talk to my team. Why? We're extremely compassionate. We've got a large amount of experience in this area to say it's not the right place for you, but maybe retail super could be. Or alternatively, yep, self-managed super is the place to go. And these are the ways that we would encourage you to do that. So, it's a total nose to tail for you, and having that guidance, especially in the early years, is extremely important, because if you don't know what to do, let's say you've decided to go super budget and you go and get yourself set up with an SMSF online really cheap. Okay, what are you going to do now? Yep. Where are you getting your help from? What are you reading? Is it accurate in terms of what you're reading if you're just in the online space? Let's say you don't get your audit done. Let's say you bought a property within your super, but you don't have a proper limited recourse borrowing agreement in play, or you don't have a corporate trustee. It's you personally as a trustee to try and save money on the setup, and you can't borrow. Or let's say you haven't had your property valuation done or your audit lodged correctly, so now your fund is non-compliant and you can't add money to it, and it's suspended until such times. These are all problems you don't need. If you can get it right, make it really easy by having a trusted advisor that will hold your hand and guide you through it in plain English in a way that you can understand and be confident with what you're doing, that's a totally different ballgame. And then once you've got that understanding of, okay, I've got it set up, it's being managed in this way, this is my asset mix, these are my annual tasks of what I got to do, what can I do now to get more money into it?
Yep.
And how do I grow it further from there? And that's the pathway to success.
Yep, very nice. Any last tips or tricks for our listeners out there, even just a basic industry or retail super fund, anything you suggest?
I think when you look at the superannuation landscape, time is a really peculiar thing to look at, because for a lot of people when they're younger, retirement is someday, one day down the line. So I don't need to worry about it right now. I'm going to get there one day, someday. And then all of a sudden you hit this flexion point and you have the come to Jesus moment of going, geez, retirement's not that far away. I better do something. And now you're chasing the game.
Yeah.
And neither of those mindsets are particularly helpful. If you can get it squared away, have it running largely on autopilot, even if it's self-managed, it can be largely on autopilot, so that you can just get this thing taken care of along with budgeting and saving, owning your own home. It is the key plank there. And as we started with a goal right at the very start, is to make sure that Australians don't find themselves in a position where they're on the pension, because that would suggest that your financial plan through your life has let you down, or there have been circumstances in life that have come along and nobbled you. You could have had a severe illness, a separation, or a work injury. There's a lot of stuff that can result in people being on the pension. But if you're in a situation whereby you don't have that issue or challenge and it's just apathy, or one day, someday I'll get around to it, don't fall into that trap. Get a good grip on it, get your contributions there, get it moving forward, get control of it, invest smartly in the right asset mix that's true for you. Keep watering and nurturing that garden, and by the time you need it, there'll be so many fruit trees that are in there. You're going to have a wonderful retirement. And when I look at some of our clients, let's just take Stuart and Jill Garrett as an example of this.
Yeah.
So these guys, neither of them in massively highly paid careers, but solid, but not high income earners. They got a job done early. They decided to set up a self-managed super. They got their asset mix right in it. And when you hear people making 560 grand profit in their super for the year,
so good,
just for the year, it means that their lifestyle in retirement is enviable compared to what most people have when they're working, and they've got plenty of cash flow happening, and it's just a decision away. Make the decision, get the job done, and don't give up. Keep following it through. It's a long-term window, but don't leave it too late and have that come to Jesus moment. It's no good.
That's it. AB, thanks for the advice. Appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. Anytime. There you have it, guys. Make sure you give us a review and a rating, and we look forward to hosting you next week.